Hello, and thank you very much for being with us. I'm Pat Tekateka. I'm a medical doctor and an evolutionary psychology enthusiast. In this conversation, as already mentioned, we will be exploring aspects of evolutionary psychology to understand how we, as human beings, we think and we make decisions that can affect our lives. We will also discuss how we can use the information we'll be discussing in this space to transform our lives, to improve ourselves, to reach our full potential in life. The main goal of our self-development space is to help yourself become the best version you can be. For a man, it means transforming an average man into a high-value man. And for a woman, meaning to transform you to a woman who will deserve the appreciation and the admiration of the man you desire. Today's conversation will be like a flamingo flying over the male mating strategy. And why will we be discussing the male mating strategy? Why is it so important to understand the evolutionary, psychological, and behavioral aspects that drive man's intention to pursue, to seek, to form relationship with women? What are the conscious and unconscious factors and the natural and biological aspects of this interaction process? These will be the main aspects that we'll be discussing in this video. But in the next one, we will analyze the female mating strategy. And later on, we will conclude this series of analysis cross-matching both mating strategy, the male and the female mating strategies, and analyzing how modernity affects these dynamics and the controversies involved. We will also examine the likely unsuccessful efforts and battles lost before even beginning. We will also analyze what does modernity brings us, which is not aligned with nature and biology. To discuss the male mating strategy, it's crucial to understand some basic concepts of sexuality. First, let's talk about the origin and the function of sex. The word sex originals coming from Latin, meaning the process of dividing something which was previously united. There are two scientifically known ways of expressing sexuality with two main objectives: sex purely for reproductive purposes and sex for purposes unrelated with reproduction. We are talking about sex for pleasure. Sex is an extremely important activity because of the emotional value involved in it. It has several implications, not only for human beings, but even for all other animals that do not have sex for pleasure. Sexuality has also major implications leading to battles, to deaths in the pursuit of reproductive rights across diverse living beings. In humans, sexuality has a double implication. Beside the emotions, adventures, controversies, battles related to reproduction, there are additional conflicts and issues associated with pleasure in sexuality. Humans and bonobos, commonly known as pygmy chimpanzees, are the only two species that have sex purely for pleasure. So human reproduction is sexual reproduction, which is extremely costly and involves serious risks compared to asexual reproduction. In asexual reproduction, a single being has everything necessary to reproduce itself, with all the required energy concentrated in this single being. In contrast, in sexual reproduction, which is our reproduction in humans, involves many risks. These risks begins for the process of searching a partner. There are competitive battles for both males and females to find and get access to a partner. And these will be the first level of risks, which will be costly and danger involved in sexual reproduction. After this level of danger, other aspects comes into play, such as diseases that can be transmitted during the sexual act itself. Additionally, the offspring that results from sexual reproduction are often incapable of taking care of themselves in the first day of their lives. Beings that reproduce asexually have everything necessary for reproduction within a single organism. When the time comes for reproduction, the organism simply divides itself from one into two and continues forward. And these two beings, the new ones, are born with everything necessary to take care of themselves and stay alive. Another crucial component of the advantages and disadvantages of asexual reproduction is the population growth rate. In asexual reproduction, where each living being has everything which is needed for reproduction, there is 100% population growth from one generation to the next generation. If there were 100 individuals in the previous generation, there would be 200 in the next generation. Has each individual divided into two. In contrast, in sexual reproduction, like our reproduction, operates completely differently. Let's take the same example. At the beginning, in the generation of progenitors, there are 100 individuals, just like the asexual reproduction. Of these 100 individuals, we will need 50 females and 50 males, or other variants of number which you can imagine. These will be in order to facilitate reproduction for the next generation. A critical question arises. In the next generation, only females will generate new beings. Males will be remaining on the sidelines, providing logistical supports, but the new beings will emerge from the 50 females. In our case, from the 50 women. Thus, with 50 females, there will be only 50 newborns, starting with 100 adult individuals and adding only 50 descendants. The population growth will be 50%. These basic components are essential to understand the dynamics at play and where the metaphorical flamingo can touch or avoid the water in its circling flight around the male mating strategy. Let's set aside sex for pleasure and focus exclusively on sex for reproductive purposes in human beings. Sex for pleasure depends on various factors such as individual needs, desires, biological and hormonal constitutions for both male and females. We will delve into that topic in another time. Now let's discuss sex for reproductive purposes only. When a woman is born, she has a certain number of immature eggs, a few millions at birth. I will include the specific numbers in the footer, but it's around 3 million or 4 million eggs. By puberty, the number decreased to approximately 400,000. When a woman reaches puberty and gains reproductive capacity, she has the opportunity to reproduce once every 28 days. We have already set aside sex for pleasure. We are only discussing reproduction. This means she has one opportunity to reproduce each month. Given this single monthly opportunity, a woman must maximize its use. In contrast, men produce reproductive cells, enough sperm to procreate at least once a day. These biological differences have significant implications for everyday life and mating strategies. If we consider that the reproductive age ranges from 18 to 40 years old for a woman, it means she will have about 264 opportunities to reproduce, meaning 22 years multiplied by 12 months. And in that point, we are not accounting for the pregnancy and lactation periods, during which she typically cannot conceive, meaning sex has no intention. We are speaking about sex for reproduction. These factors are crucial to understand as they impact mating strategies and reproductive dynamics. While we are focusing on men, it's essential to acknowledge these aspects. One of the crucial functions of sex is to allow genetic variability. For example, there are claims that Snoop Dogg has 17% of Mozambican genetics, which is one of the countries which is in the sub-Saharan region in Africa. So, this is one of the points which can show us genetic variability. Globalization has further facilitated genetic transfers through the expansion of empires, economic powers, similar to the forced migrations from Africa to America and Europe centuries ago. All these people which will be involved in this interaction will have to satisfy biological needs and contribute to genetic diversity, although some communities remains more closed than others. Sexuality also helps correct genetic errors, though it can sometimes enhance unwanted characteristics. So after this explanation, let's set aside the scientific aspects and return to our primary focus, the dynamics of male and female interactions. First, we need to realize that there are several mating strategies. We will outline these strategies to provide a clear and more comprehensive understanding of what we are discussing. In general, there are 5 fundamental mating strategies. Let's start with monogamy. This is the mating strategy where an individual of one sex mates exclusively with an individual of the opposite sex. For this strategy to be functional, supporting reproduction and healthy population growth, there must be almost equal numbers of available males and female individuals. Among mammals, including us human beings, this strategy is not predominantly embraced as a biological and natural strategy. The second mating strategy is polygamy. Polygamy is any strategy involving a person who has multiple spouses. When a man has multiple wives, it can be called polygyny. And when a woman has multiple husbands, it is called polyandry. Polygyny is the biological and natural mating strategy for males of the human species, where a male seeks to mate and reproduce with several females. We will explore these in more details shortly. So next, let's briefly cover the other strategies before we go deeper. Polyandry, the opposite of polygyny, involves one female mating with several males. The fourth mating strategy is promiscuity. In this strategy, multiple males and multiple females engage in disordered mating process without any accountability and no responsibility. The fifth mating strategy is a mix of polygyny and polyandry, which is ultimately similar to promiscuity, but with one exception. While promiscuity lacks responsibility and accountability, this fifth strategy involves mutual acceptance and acknowledge among all parties. Similar to polyandry, where everyone knows and accepts that the men are with the same woman, and polygyny, where the women know and accept that they are with the same man. This strategy involves all men having sex with all women and vice versa, within a close and consensual relationship. This is known as polygyny. In a monogamous relationship, each male pairs with a female, ideally ensuring that no one is left without a partner. However, in practice, not all males will be desirable for females, and not all females will be desired by males. So, not everyone will form a relationship. Modern society often promotes monogamy as the standard strategy, but biologically and naturally, factors can prevent its universal adoption. We will explore these factors in more depth later. In polygyny, a man mates with several women. Given the nearly balanced world population of men and women, if we imagine a polygynous society with 10 men and 10 women, about 30 to 40 men would mate with all 100 women, leaving the remaining 60 men without partners. The men who can mate are typically the most masculine, high-valued individual with desirable traits such as good physical condition and high status. Polygyny has existed for thousands of years, and while the criteria for evaluating desirable traits may change, the fundamental dynamics remains. Historically, a man's status may have been determined by hunting success, with the most desirable or with the most successful hunters being highly evaluated by the communities and the females. Even today, in places where polygyny, when we speak about polygyny, generally we are talking about polygamy, is practiced. There are conditions ensuring that the men can care for their multiple wives, preventing them from suffering. In polygyny, some men will inevitably be left out, while all women will be integrated into the system. In polyandry, the opposite occurs. Using the same example of 100 women and 100 men, we would have around 20 women, likely the most beautiful, loving, and appreciated, each with 2 or 3 men. Ultimately, only 30 or 40 women would be partnered with the 100 men, leaving 60 to 70 women without partners. In this scenario, women will be the losers. Now let's delve into promiscuity. In this strategy, no one loses. Everyone mates with everyone else without any accountability and any responsibility. This is a crude analogy, but it illustrates the lack of structure in promiscuity. Next, we have polygyny, where the men and the women interbreed with everyone, but with accountability and responsibility. It's similar to promiscuity, but in polygyny, everyone knows what's happening and acknowledges their actions. So now let's focus on the male mating strategy known as polygamy, where the men seek to mate with multiple women. Women often dislike polygamy because it forces them to share the high-value men that they desire and they have. Why do the men use polygamy as a mating strategy? Biologically and naturally, it allows a man greater chances of procreation to spread his genes. Remember, a woman has only one opportunity to reproduce per month, while a man can reproduce at least once a day. These aspects of polygamy are not voluntary. They are biologically and naturally determined. At the end of 30 days, if a man has enough women, he can impregnate 30 women. Conversely, even if a woman has 100 excellent and available men, she can only get pregnant once a month and only from one man. After getting pregnant, she cannot conceive again for 9 months. Plus, the breastfeeding period, totally around 3 years, during which she cannot utilize the man's reproductive capabilities. During these 3 years, if the man cannot engage in reproduction, his reproductive cells will age, potentially posing health risks and wasting his reproductive productivity. This is why, biologically and naturally, men are driven to polygamy. Society, however, imposes restrictions to prevent irresponsible and incompetent individuals from practicing polygamy, as they would not be able to take care of multiple wives or children properly. Polygamy is also mentioned in religious contexts and has not been problematized in sacred scriptures because it is seen as a biological and natural way of a male mating strategy. While we respect that women do not like it because no one likes to share what belongs to them, we should not equate this to men sharing their wives, as this would result in a significant social and emotional disruptions. We will delve deeper into this topic in future discussions. The main objective of this process of polygamy is not to meet societal expectations, which dictate that only dominant males with resources can mate. Biologically, females will naturally be attracted to the same traits found in dominant males and will not be attracted to traits in non-dominant males, meaning naturally they'll be drawn to share the men with dominant traits. Therefore, even without societal influences, female will be drawn to the best placed male as part of natural selection. Females in the genetic sense of all living beings seek for partners who can guarantee excellent genes for their offsprings. Dominant males transmit dominant genes, protection, and resources. These biological and natural traits remain with women even with modernity, where financial resources have replaced hunting success. This attraction is not a conscious decision. This is uncontrollable. With the advent of feminism and the other movements, people have become less accepting of polygamy. However, polygamy is a natural mating strategy and biological of man. Societies like ours that do not officially accept polygamy, which is a safer system looking from a health perspective, may inadvertently promote promiscuity because men naturally seek access for multiple women. Men by nature do not accept polyandry. To this day, there is no culture or a country that accepts polyandry in a widespread and established manner, as polygamy is accepted. Polyandry does not offer social and demographic benefits. Naturally, women have lower productivity than men in resource acquisition, so they seek men who achieve more and possess more. In a polyandry situation, a woman occupies 2 or 3 men who produces more than she does. These men are thus unavailable to other women who could benefit for their resources. This system is highly detrimental to population growth. Recall that a woman can only get pregnant once every 3 years. So let's take an example of 3 men who are with 1 woman. So in a 9-year relationship, we will have 3 children and 4 adults, totaling 7 people. In contrast, polygamy supports population growth. A man who produces more resources than a woman can share these resources with 3 women, being his wives, who would otherwise struggle. A high-value man, millionaires, multimillionaires, or billionaires are very rare in the world. In terms of demographic, a man in a polygamous relationship can impregnate 3 women in a single month, and over 3 years, he can impregnate the 3 women again, and after another 3 years, do it once more. At the end of 9 years, this polygamous group will consist of 4 adults and 9 children, totaling 13 people. In the polyandry group, the society did not even manage to double the size. From 4, they went to 7 in 9 years. Meanwhile, the polygamous group more than tripled, going from 4 to 13. These additional people are crucial for productivity, military strength, and other societal needs. We need to analyze and understand these points to place the right emphasis on them. For example, if we misplace the dot on an I, it completely changes the meaning of a word. This is why we don't employ women in the military. Losing a woman in a battle would set the society back significantly, making recovery difficult and potentially extinguishing a culture. However, if a man is lost in a battle, a fewer men can engage in a polygamous process to double, triple population in a generation or within 10 or 20 years. Don't assume that women won't accept polygamous, because it's in the man's blood and genetics to seek access for multiple women. If society don't accept polygamy and men don't want polyandry and polygynyandry because they never want to share their wives, the situation becomes simple. Polygamy turns into promiscuity. A man might have a serious relationship socially, but monthly, bi-monthly, quarterly, or annually, he will seek a lover to satisfy his biological and natural needs. It has always been this way. Either he lives polygamously or promiscuously to have access to the woman he seeks. A woman cannot control this because a high-value man has options. You can either track your man's whereabouts or risk him bringing home diseases from strangers, as emotional decisions often lead to unprotected encounters. And it won't help to cry over the spilled milk. Remember, when we discussed the Gauss curve, we mentioned that 16% exhibit the undesirable traits. Another 16% will exhibit the desirable traits. And the middle 68% is the one which goes with the wind. They are unable to firmly state what they want. Men in this middle group often want polygamy, but can't admit it. They leave the house and engage in promiscuity, not knowing if their encounters are clean and safe. A high-value man, dominant male, with a personality and security traits typically of such a man, will openly express his desire for polygamy to his wife. And if she knows that she can't find a better man, she will just accept sharing him. Refer yourself to the Quran or to the Bible, and you will see that even the woman who lived in the polygamous relationship there with those blessed men by God, those high-value men, their wife didn't like to have their husbands with concubines. Although the wife didn't like sharing, they preferred being with a high-value man, a dominant male who provided protection, tranquility, over being with a dominated man who provided nothing. And many times, when these women's emotional needs were unmet, they sometimes turned into infidelity, the same which happens today. Despite their dislike for sharing, to access what they most desirable, they submitted to polygamy. They understood clearly that you cannot win always. You have to lose something to gain something. Men also lose something in this arrangement. The man brings to the relationship resources and protection and more. The most difficult and laborious thing to achieve in life is resources. The main benefit a woman can give to a man is her sexuality. Everything else a man can achieve more than a woman. Only exclusive benefit a man can receive from a woman is her sexuality, forming a family and having children. He produces and brings everything to benefit the household. The most difficult things to achieve in life are resources and to form a successful family. Anyone can have children and form a family. Even someone living under the bridge can do that. Managing a successful family is much harder, and that's why it's a pillar of the male mating strategy and part of men's sexual value market. Thank you very much. I'm Patekateka, an evolutionary psychology enthusiast, and I'm sure you'll love the video coming next. Until the next conversation.
É natural. Respeitamos bastante o fato das mulheres não gostarem. Por quê? Por natureza, nenhum ser humano gosta de partilhar o que lhe pertence. A mulher também não vai gostar de partilhar os recursos, a proteção, o homem dela.